Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Portal to Creation podcast. Today I'm going to have an interview with Dr. Bill Pettit. Dr. Pettit is a retired, previously board-certified psychiatrist with more than 30 years of work experience. Also, he has more than 16 years of experience as an academic teacher. Since 1983, Dr. Pettit has been a student and sharer of the three principles, and he has been sharing them with many individuals and also with organizations. Today, we will talk about his understanding of mental health, how to access our innate mental well-being, his approach to creativity, and much more. Welcome, Bill, to our little interview today about the topic mental health, mental well-being for artists. And I was wondering, what kind of role does art play in your life?
You know, I think of art in pretty broad terms, in terms of creation of, novel things that haven't been created before, Beautiful. And so I think of in my life, what I've really seen is that the more I'm quiet inside, the more novel things come to me that I had never thought of before. And it was almost like, to me, it's almost like there's a stream of creative energy, a kind of a river of creative energy that's coming through me and coming through every person. And the form that the art takes is generally guided by the interest or the gifts or the unique contribution that person has to make. So, I'm not a songwriter and I'm not a picture painter, so that my creativity and my art comes in maybe seeing a metaphor that I'd never seen before that helps people really understand a concept or a truth that I was trying to point to in other ways, or a story comes to me. The perfect story comes to me that seems to touch somebody's heart and open new avenues to them. So I guess that's the way I think of. I don't think of myself as an artist, but then as you say it that way, I think we all are artists or have the potential to be artists.
I really love that. I also think that, life itself is something so creative. So everybody who lives is also creative and is a creator and an artist.
I'm presently, I've had it on my bookshelf for 20 years, and I'm reading Stephen Hawking's The Short History of Time, Wow. And he just talks about how adults so often don't ask questions that children do. Children say, well, what was there before the Big Bang? What's that? And he's talking about now how I just am in the first few pages about how they came to realize that even an infinite universe that was static would collapse upon itself, and then they started seeing that the universe is actually still expanding, and just step by step how even physicists have had insights that have helped them understand a little bit in a cognitive way the energy behind life. You and I have been exposed to these three universal principles of universal mind, thought, and consciousness, and they've really helped me get a glimpse of creation, of what's behind creation, and what's also behind creation of my experience every moment of my life, and that's been exciting and still remains exciting after 38 years. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. So, two things that I heard in what you just said is, on the one hand, getting quiet and listen, and on the other hand, being very curious and open and ask questions. And from our work together, I also know that these are two fundamental things in the way you see mental health and mental well-being today. Is this right?
So the two things being finding a place of quiet, and what was the second thing?
Being curious and being open and explorative.
Yeah. I used to, for even a number of years, think it was about, quote, getting quiet. And then I realized there was a step. People say, well, how do I get quiet? And I realized that the step was that, very simply, to get present in my life as best as I can, not judging that I'm not doing it very well, and paying as less attention to my thinking as I can right now. I mean, if that's even just a 20% decrease in the attention I'm giving it, that because silence is innate to us, and if we just get in the present moment as best as we can, without trying to do anything to our thinking, like a bicycle wheel that's turned upside down, that once the person starts to lets go of the pedal and quits making the wheel go fast, the wheel will slow. And I would say that for most people, the mind, if people get present as best as they can, the mind will slow much quicker than the bicycle wheel will. A story just came to me, and whenever you've been with me enough, George, that when they come, I think they're gifts, that coming from an intelligence beyond my stored information, or using my stored information. I remember, and I'd love to find literature on this, but when the Germans invaded Russia and they made that incredible onslaught into Russia, there was a story that they rocketed a mental health hospital, and that there were a number of people who had been in a catatonic state, either both physical and not moving and having to be toileted and fed and clothed, or even if they were mobile and able to do that, had not spoken for many years, had been kind of caught, if you will, a prisoner of their own thinking, to a degree beyond what most of us have experienced. And when the rockets hit and there was fire, and that many of these people suddenly let go of their thinking because there was something more important, and they got into the present, and they were helping people. They were trying to help the wounded. They were comforting people. They were doing whatever the wisest person would be doing. They were being guided by something other than being captured at their thoughts. And I think that's a dramatic example of the fact of the power of going to the present as best as we can, and being present in the only thing that exists. I love this saying that infinity is just an infinite number of nows. That's all it
makes
is.
absolutely sense to me. Yeah. Oh. And something that got more and more important for me in the last years is to realize that I don't need that external things can pull me out of my thinking, but it's not necessary. I don't need to go to a certain place or do a certain thing to slow down. Even it can be helpful sometimes, but for me, it was liberating to learn that it's not necessary. Would you agree on that?
Well, it's interesting, our language, George, because what you said was, and I know our relationship, you're fine on me doing this. What you said is, I realize things external to me can pull me out of my being in present, right?
Or not bring me into the present. That's what they pull me out of my thinking.
Oh, pull you out of your thinking.
They bring me to the now, like
into the present.
Doing sports or meditating or having a shower or walking in the nature.
Yeah. I would, rather than giving the power to those things pulling you out of your thinking, I think that I would take the power back to within yourself.
Yes.
That I see that I have the power to get present in sports, to get, people talk about, oh yeah, I distracted myself by watching the football game. No. I used to think that myself, or I distract. No, you didn't. You just, that was a place that you could get present.
Yeah.
That's different than distracting, like I'm using some coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've heard me tell the story about the grandmother that had severe depression and anxiety, but she was puzzled by the fact that 2 hours twice a week, her grandchildren came over and made her happy for 2 hours twice a week. Because she thought that they were, and of course, you know my mischievousness, that I kind of got serious and said, Betty, that's not fair. It's not fair to blame your grandchildren. It's not their fault. She said, what are you talking about? I said, it's not their fault that you get happy for those 2 hours. What happens is being present with your grandchildren is more important than being in your thoughts at that moment.
Oh,
yeah. And so you get present and your heart opens and fills you up with gratitude and love, and you blame it on your grandchildren. And it's not fair, because then when they leave and you go back to paying attention and doing battle or entertaining your anxious thoughts, you blame it on them for taking away your good feelings. So my only point would be that I think it's worth taking your power, that it's starting to see that we have the power. Sid Banks says that we have the power to choose which thoughts we give attention to. And I think that includes saying, let me get present in something that right now is more important than my thinking, or allows me an avenue, at least a gate to getting free from the attachment I have right now to thinking that is not serving me. Does that am I making any sense? Or
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah. Would you define mental health as this detachment of our own thinking, or how would you define mental health, mental well-being for yourself?
I think I define it as a feeling, a feeling that could be described a feeling of ease versus dis-ease, a feeling of ease. And with that feeling of ease, I think there is a quiet, there is a calm, there is a curiosity, but there's also there's a loving feeling. There's a connectedness to the universe, to other people. So I think that feeling of mental well-being is a description of what happens when a person is really present in the present moment, without contamination of the past or the future, or even judgment about the present.
Yeah.
So I think mental well-being is a loving, to me, I experience it as a loving, lighthearted feeling that has that in our country, in the United States, Sports Illustrated used to have these advertisements that besides getting the year's subscription to Sports Illustrated, you get all these other things. You get a free jacket, you get the Pro Football League schedule, so it's kind of like that. Mental well-being to me is a loving, lighthearted feeling that brings with it creativity, love, understanding. You talked about it earlier, incredible gratitude for what I have rather than focusing on what I don't have. So it's a gift that just has a lot of little other gifts with it that are powerful to me.
Yeah.
And it's not about having to be perfect, because it ain't going to happen. We're going to fail miserably. But if we start to appreciate that feeling, one of the things that happens is that we become more aware when we're away from it.
Yes.
So Sid Banks talks about it's natural, it's totally natural as a human being to get a psychological virus, to have your mood go down, to have your anxiety go up, to have your thinking get a little muddled. But the more you're sensitive to, wow, I'm not thinking as clearly as I was. I'm feeling some tension. My mood's gone down a little bit. What's come to me recently is that people don't seem to realize that, I don't know the percentage, but I think it might be 70, 80. I forget what it is. A large percentage of our thinking is unconscious.
Yeah.
And Freud had that right. He really did. Where and God love him, some people vilify Freud, but he saw that. It's just that his solution to that was to try to analyze your dreams or lie on a couch and free associate, rather than being aware if something gets triggered, your feeling level is going to change, your tension level, your thinking clarity, your mood. And that's just a time to go towards quiet again, to go towards the present. It's real simple.
It's like an alarm system, as you often call it, right?
Yeah. But you've heard me call it love letters.
Yeah.
To me, there's a switch. I love Latin based. I just love, because I had a lot of Latin when I was young. I love the Latin based words. And to me, what's behind life, it wasn't what I was raised with was behind life, but what I've come to experience in my heart behind life is both benevolent and beneficent. Now, benevolent is from the Latin words. Do you know? Or I'll just say, benevolent means to wish, but bene as well. Mm-hmm. And the benevolent, the V part of it comes from the Latin word to wish somebody well. So you're benevolent, okay? Beneficent comes from well, and the word to do, to act in a loving, well way. So to me, the source of life is benevolent and beneficent. Mm. It's always trying to wake us up to get back to wellness. Like a rumble strip on the side of the road is not your enemy. It wakes you up so you don't flip into the ditch.
Well, yeah.
A panic attack is not the enemy. It's trying to say, listen, I don't want you to get a cancer. I don't want you to have a stroke. I don't want you to have a heart attack. I've tried to get your attention earlier, but you didn't hear me. So I've had to up the ante.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that was really important for me to hear was, I can say the other way around. The first time I came to the Principals Conference in London, I just experienced like panic attacks a few months before that.
Wow.
And through talking through a therapist, I was really afraid that something in me is like wrong or broken.
Right.
And when I came to the principals conference, I heard you speaking about never broken, nothing lacking.
Right.
And that really changed my life.
Wow.
To learn that.
Wow.
And not to be afraid of days where I'm not in the lighthearted feeling and where I maybe feel
right.
great or anxiety.
Not to judge that. Yeah.
Yeah, not to judge that. And I recently heard that artists, musicians have a raised likelihood to get depression or anxiety disorders. And I think, from my experience, a lot of artists are very sensitive, and they feel their emotions really strongly. And I think if they would see this possibility of that they're not broken and that nothing is lacking, it would be way more easy for them to return to their home base of mental well-being, mental health. That at least describes my own experience.
I think that's beautiful what you just said, and I think it's true in my experience. You have much more experience being with artists, but I think it's true. And if they could see that as a gift, their sensitivity. If you were in a movie theater, you would want the fire alarm to be really sensitive to fire.
Yes.
You wouldn't want it to have a high tolerance for there being fire in the theater. If you were rich enough to have a yacht, you would want an alarm that let you know when you'd taken on a half an inch of water down below, not when you'd taken within 2 inches of what the boat would sink, right? So if people could see that their sensitivity is a beautiful gift, that they don't have to get as far off, lost in the woods before they realize that they're going towards getting lost in the woods. That then they could see that as a gift rather than a curse. Because I think a lot of people experience sensitivity without understanding it as a loving, benevolent message that that's pointing them to look in a different direction. I didn't even know there was another direction to look until I was 41. All I thought I had was analysis. So I'd be interested your thought on that, George. But I think a lot of people that are artists that are very sensitive, and some are artists in different ways, I think they experience their sensitivity as a curse, without when there is an understanding of the meaning of the sensitivity or the benevolence or the gift of the sensitivity.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't see that it's a gift yet for them, and very often, from my own experience and the experience of working with a lot of artists, they definitely know that there's more than analysis. They know how it feels like to be connected to something bigger and to have this insights coming through them, right? Or this music coming through them,
right?
And sometimes they don't trust it yet. They don't know yet that it's reliable. They think it's something that happens once in a lifetime, to be extreme, or that only happens if the stars are aligned, or that only happens when they are on drugs sometimes.
Right. Something that decenters them from their thinking.
Yes.
As we were talking earlier. Absolutely. They don't, and I didn't know that. I had seen times in my life where I got lucky, I thought. But I didn't know that those were times that I allowed my mind to quiet enough for the light to come through, if you will. You know, you and I have talked. I love Leonard Cohen's anthem where he says everything has a crack in it. That's how the light gets in. to me, that may come that way, but it comes the other way too. Every time we allow our mind to quiet enough, it creates a crack to the light to come out, to come through. The light for the light to come out, not to get in, because the light is always trying to come through us.
Yeah.
The light of creativity, the light of wisdom, the light of understanding.
Absolutely.
Does that, yeah.
Mm.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
You didn't, not at all. It was really, I just saw something in a new perspective for myself. And a question that I get often asked and that I want to ask you in our interview is, like, what advice would you give to an artist, or let's say to a human being who is struggling with their mental well-being and who doesn't feel connected to it right now? Is there like an advice that you could give, or something that you want to share to that?
I allowed myself just a little quiet to listen and hear. And what came to me, George, is that when we're struggling, it's almost the less we do, the better. Mm-hmm. So people that are drowning don't know that if they stop flailing, they might have to move their arms. Some people just float naturally, but if they stop flailing their arms and legs and then move their arms just ever so gently on their back, they would be floating on their back. And so two metaphors came to me that I know you've heard many times from me. When I'm really struggling, it's like I'm 5 feet underwater with a 3-foot snorkel.
Yeah.
And to me, trying to do something there other than allowing myself to go back to the surface is gonna not turn out well. Because when people are upset and struggling, metaphorically, I think our IQ drops to minus 8.7. That's not based on any real research. And the other thing is that I think that most people don't realize that I'm going to say that our mental well-being is like a cork of substantial size. And if we had a cork of substantial size, and I know you're much stronger than I, being I'm just short of my 79th birthday, but it would take both of us exerting constant, significant pressure to keep the cork underwater. And as soon as we let go of it, the cork would not have any trouble finding its way home to the surface. And I think we've falsely, and part of it was Freudian's innocent and I think even some religions about us being contaminated with, from birth as human beings, that I would say that mental well-being is like a huge cork. It's, if you watch small children, 97% of the time they're in their mental well-being.
Yeah.
And when they lose it, they get over it and they're back again.
Really quickly, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that my I had a grandson, William III, born 2 days ago?
No. Oh.
He's precious. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Sweet. William III. Sounds good.
So I hope that answered, but
yes.
Yeah, I would say as little as possible. That the only goal when is just to realize that you don't have to, the less you do, the better. Get present as best as you can, even if it's only a 2.5 out of 10. If you just accept being the best 2.5 you can be, you're going to be headed to 3.5, then 4.5, then 5.5. But if you try to do something, all you have is your personal thinking and your intellect, and that's what got you innocently in the state that you're in. So it's not going to work to go back to that.
Yeah.
And looking in the direction of the three principles, and Sydney Banks's videos, to me especially, the Long Beach, are a great place to start. The Great Illusion, that first 16 minutes of the Great Illusion, for so many people, if they can listen to it as quietly as they can. I always tell people, even if you're struggling, take a warm bath, sit with your kitty for 20 minutes, take a walk, whatever will allow you to be present even 10% more, and then watch the Great Illusion from a desire to have peace in your heart. Vast majority of people, they might not know what the hell he said, but they feel better.
I totally agree on that. And I watched these videos many, many times, and I'm still hearing new things, and I still get new insights. And
you said that even recently you saw some more. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And for me, my experience is that the moments where I'm not in my mental well-being get shorter and shorter, and less in general too. And since we talked about Freudian a few times, when I came back from the first three principle conference, I was in a really good space, and I did not have to worry about panic attacks or like anxiety disorders anymore. And when I went to the therapist that I was seeing at this time, who was working as a psychoanalyst, it was very difficult to understand that for him, and he referred to it as like spontaneous healing, which I knew it wasn't. and he shared one quote that stuck with me. He said, for him, it sounds like that I found truth in a quote that Christians say, and they say you can't fall deeper than in God's hand.
Say that again. You can't follow.
You cannot fall deeper than in God's hand.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
And even if I'm not into Christian religion, right, or religions as systems,
right,
it resonated with me.
Right.
And I really understood on a deep level that I can't fall at all, in a way.
Right. Right.
And I mean,
if there's infinity, then falling becomes flying.
I love that. Yeah, true. Nice. I think that's a great way to end our interview. It's a nice picture. And if people want to find more about your work and you in general, Bill, I think the best way is to refer them to your website that I will link below the video.
You could give them you could give them my email too.
Yeah.
My direct email is fine.
Awesome. So I give them.
But reviewing stuff on the website would be the first step, I think.
Absolutely. And if you as a listener or watcher will go there, you find a lot of great resources like other interviews, other podcasts, links to Sid Banks, to the three principles in general. So I think if people are curious to know more about the three principles that we refer to and what it's all about, I think your website is a very great place to start. It was really helpful for me.
And I'm amazed at how much is on YouTube too,
Yeah.
There's a lot on YouTube.
Yeah. And of course, you also can reach out to me, and I'm happy to refer you to more people, to more resources. Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill, for this interview.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I would just say to people, especially if they're artists but anybody, that just talking with you too would be very valuable, because I think you have made an incredible journey, and you're able to talk from that place. Yeah.
Sure.
So
thank you.
You're welcome.